On today's episode of Hungry for Wisdom, we have to talk about this stuff. What I got to do is start a podcast? Mature content warning does not begin to cover what we're going to talk about today. And thank God, post Tenebras Lukes. Google it. It is episode 12. Turn it up! Welcome to Hungry for Wisdom. This is the podcast for people who want to know what God knows. He hasn't told us everything, but man, he has told us a lot. I'm Dustin, pastor at Grace and Truth. If you want to know what God knows, let's dig in. We're dedicating this one to USIAHT. What does that acronym stand for? It stands for the United States Institute Against Human Trafficking. These guys are based out of Florida, and we just started a relationship with these guys not too long ago. And basically, as we're going to be getting into today, what the USIAHT is doing is combating human trafficking from the side of demand, not just from the side of supply. We're going to talk about all of those terms. We want to work a lot in rescue and in going after the people who are in the most need and being victimized. There's also another issue to hit, which is why is there so much demand for sex trafficking to begin with? What's going on with these guys? And so they're a great organization that we have just gotten to know through our connection with Ministries. So we've got Tricia MacFarlan here. Tricia, how you doing?
I'm doing great this morning. How are you doing?
Doing fine so far. Haven't had time to screw it up yet. Let's see what we can do about that. I'm also here with Pastor Ben, the bearded beaver. How are you, sir?
I'm doing excellent, sir.
Freshly back from vacation.
Amen.
Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed.
Ready to rock.
I don't think beavers have bushy tails.
No, if as I recall, they're flat.
Yeah. Bright-eyed and flat-tailed. All right, good to see you, man. We're gonna do a very short. It's not even really a devotion. We're gonna get into Proverbs here, read a couple of verses, and I just want to set the tone up front for what we're going to be talking about. So
here we go. All right, so our Proverbs for today is Proverbs 31, 8 and 9. Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all the unfortunate. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and defend the rights of the afflicted and needy.
Thank you, sir. That is a good word. So, Tricia, we had you in here back in season 1, and you kind of laid out for us a lot of the horrifying information of what the sex trafficking world looks like, specifically here in the Tri-Cities. And a lot of times we get this question from people, as I'm sure you get all the time, is that really a problem here? And so I just want to review some of this stuff, maybe from 30,000 feet. Sex trafficking is a big problem in the Tri-Cities, yes?
Unfortunately, yes.
You guys have a lot of work to do. So
we do.
Roughly, how do you go about it? What's your approach for attacking this problem?
Okay, so Ministries is reflecting the grace of God. We're bringing the love of Christ into victims and survivors of sex trafficking through local education, intervention, restoration, and aftercare. So education pieces like, coming on Pastor Dustin's podcast, for instance, or coming to your school, coming to your Rotary group, whatever it might be, making sure more eyes and ears understand what is going on with trafficking, what it looks like, and how they can intervene. Because we want fewer kids to, or adults to have to face this. And we want those who are facing it to get intervention earlier. Beyond that, we run a 24/7 hotline, 1-800-212-9995. That is, I said 1-800. That's funny. We are 509-212-9995.
I was like, I don't think that's what my card says that I give out to people.
Yeah, we are not an 800 number, but if you call the national hotline, you will get plugged into our local hotline. It just takes a lot longer. So memorize the correct local hotline.
Which is?
509-212-9995.
Cool. Yeah, so there's this shadow industry that... Oh, I'm sorry, I cut you off there. There's also... you guys do a lot of work as far as helping these young ladies recover once they've been pulled out of this. Describe that a little bit.
Yeah, so first our advocates are out doing purposeful outreach, out on the streets, online, with different agencies, trying to find the folks who are being victimized because they are hidden in plain sight in our community. Then we have our Ministries Outreach Center where they're invited in for counseling, art therapy, music therapy, self-defense classes, kickboxing, and pie baking.
Yes.
Making jewelry, whatever it is that is a cause for fun and a way to start the body and mind on the healing process. Mm-hmm. Building community and a safe place to be with others. Our survivor support groups have been the strongest and most powerful healing method we have there. Well, the strongest and most powerful is our foundation and baseline, which is Jesus Christ. But
But the
within
kickboxing and the pie classes are awesome
makes
too.
it fun. Yeah. I think Jesus would have fun with that too.
Yeah, agreed.
But our support groups right now, they're going through a curriculum called Ending the Game. And these are girls who've all been trafficked. Some of them first by their parent, next by the boyfriend, next by another adult manipulator, depending on their ages. At the same time, a lot of them have kiddos. So we have a kids club that same time for the kids to be getting loved on and knowing the truth and getting safe community. But these gals are finding support for one another and for themselves in these support groups. Not only that, education, which you would think they'd know all about trafficking. They've lived it, right? But what they've lived was their own personal story, and they were told they were the only ones, right?
Okay.
So now all of a sudden they're learning that, oh my goodness, your guy said that? That's what my guy always said. Your mom did that? That's what my mom always did.
Yeah, I was churned through a system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same story, but different for everybody. But we have a young lady that says, I've been doing one-on-one counseling for years, and this is the first time I've been able to admit some of these things that had happened to me, some of the things I've experienced, and some of the things I've been part of myself, because I'm in a room full of other girls that when we say cross the line if, one of those icebreaker games, there's a room full of girls that are crossing the line with me, and it's okay to admit it. A couple weeks ago, we had one of our gals that is a steady regular. She wasn't there. One of the other girls called her, and maybe you don't approve of smoking, but she called her and said, hey, I don't have a cigarette and I really need one. This gal shows up in tears to bring her friend a cigarette. She says, I was about to kill myself. I was about to commit suicide. You called and I knew if I could get here, you guys would surround me and you would pray for me and I'd be okay. And she is, and they did. We had a young lady in class as they're talking through the different wiles of traffickers and what they do and how they trick people and how they coerce people, when all of a sudden her eyes got as big as saucers. And she says, oh my word, my mom was my trafficker.
And the penny dropped right there.
After all these years, right? Because you believe your mom is there to protect you. She was always there watching over me while the men were doing these things. She was always there making sure I was safe. And then the realization was she was always there. She was the one instigating it. Safety was kind of a different kind of feature and fact to deal with. So it's tough stuff they're dealing with and tough stuff they're healing from, but we have a lot of fun. The joy of the Lord is really in that place. And we do things like, bring new experiences into their life as well. We go kayaking and paddleboarding, camping trips, bike rides. If you guys have fun ideas you want to share with us, it'd be great. Maybe hot air balloon next. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, kickboxing is really where my brain stops. So
Okay.
I heard that and I'm like, sweet. No, you guys got it all figured out. So yeah, I mentioned this a little bit in the intro, but there's a, in any industry, there's a supply and a demand, right? Mm-hmm. There's a product or a service. And in this industry, this seedy, secret, below the surface, we're looking at it all the time in a lot of ways and don't recognize it. It's no different. There's a supply and there's a demand. Mm-hmm. And so the demand comes from people, usually men, that want to that want to work out their sexual desires in an anonymous way, or just an illicit, or what they might consider an adventurous way, or whatever. They're just sexually broken. They got these proclivities. They're perverts, and they fuel and fund the sex trafficking industry. The supply, so that's the demand end, but the supply end comes from people, most often girls or young women, who are being trafficked. So, review from last episode. Can you define for us trafficking, human trafficking? Yeah.
So trafficking in a nutshell is the use of force, fraud, or coercion to compel a person into commercial sexual activity. So sexual activity that has any kind of exchange of value there. Okay.
There's also human trafficking where people traffic in labor, right? Not like actual slavery. And we see that a lot in other parts of the world right now, especially that's happening a lot in the Middle East and so on. I mean, they're buying and selling slaves. Mm-hmm. But here, as far as I understand, we're not so much talking about, human trafficking for labor purposes. It really is sex trafficking that's the human trafficking issue in our context, right?
For Mirror Ministries, yes, that is where God told us to focus into. For the Tri-Cities or for the U.S., and we have just as much labor trafficking. It doesn't look like it, right? We don't see, like when I went to Cambodia, there were, these brick kilns where the people lived there. The kids were then utilized as sex slaves as well, and all of that. It was so blatant and obvious. But we get used to seeing what we're seeing. And we excuse it as normal. So you see that girl walking the streets and you call her a prostitute and you kind of put blame and shame on her. Same thing you see, if you're going in to get your nails done, which I don't know how often you get your manicures done.
Weekly.
And if they're only charging you $15 for your manicure, somebody's probably not getting paid a living wage.
Okay.
Some of the places, there's a lot of good nail salons. Don't want to, but our massage parlors, however, with neon signs are a whole nother story. And a lot of those places, or our farms, or we have domestic workers within homes, restaurants. So when you note that the staff that is around you isn't allowed to talk to you, and there's intervention by the managers or owners of the business, when you note that those employees are living all together in the same place, and they're, brought to and from work, that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast, but I'll give you another agency to talk to about that. Because when we started, we were talking all kinds of human trafficking.
Yeah.
God really narrowed us down, and where he narrowed down is way bigger than we could ever handle. But we serve a big, big God.
Yeah, and speaking of this big, big God, I just want to, this is going to seem like a rabbit trail to you listeners for a second, but I think it's an important foundation for what we're going to be talking about, because we're going to be discussing what happens when God's design gets flipped on its head and a system for joy gets used as a system for abuse and for crushing and things like that. It's important to note here that God invented all of this stuff that's getting misused by people, right? So sex and sexuality and sexual desires and a sex drive and male-female sexual engagement and all that. God made that, and he made that for a really good reason and created a context. I mean, we call it marriage. And that's kind of the English word for it, but really it's this huge, beautiful design where God said, look, I'm going to create this playground, and I'm going to give you guys a great gift. Now, like anything, the greater the gift, the more damaging the perversion of it, right? The stakes go up as the greatness of the gift goes up. But if you look at where God created all of this stuff in Genesis 1 and 2 specifically, he lays things out where he says, okay, I've got creation. Now that's great. Now I'm going to take creation and I'm going to make specific categories for it. We got plants, we got animals, we got, in the animal kingdom, we've got male and female. We got all of this stuff. Then there's multiplication. So he's kind of increasing the complexity of his, or maybe the specificity of his creation throughout Genesis 1 and 2. And then he creates humanity, and it's not good for man to be alone. And so he creates woman, and then he creates marriage, and then he tells them, now go become one flesh, and then be fruitful and multiply. So like you see this pyramid building where creation is good, and then the crown jewel of creation is humanity. The crown jewel of humanity is marriage, and the crown jewel of marriage is sex. And so God really puts this as like the pinnacle celebration of his creation. And that is the reason, guys, why we humans have so much fun with it. It's because we're supposed to. We're designed that way, and God approves. Now, when you take it outside of that context, then you're no longer relating and showing love. And like Ephesians 5 talks about, when husband and wife live together, whether it's the sexual side of the relationship or any other element of it, we are displaying and like reenacting the love that Christ has for his church, right? It's like this living prophecy. And so when we take the sexual relationship outside of that context, then we're doing what Satan did, where he said, okay, I'll take what God has created, in that case himself, in our case sex, and I will make that like the Most High. I will make that God. Everything will serve that. And when that happens, you wind up in quite literally hell on earth, right? And so that's what we're talking about now, is we're talking about the hell that is created when sex gets taken outside of its proper context. So if you guys are wondering, why Christians freak out about, fornication and living together before you're married and same-sex marriage and transgenderism and all of this stuff. It's not because we've got a checklist of things that we have to affirm in order to be okay with God. It's because God's doing some stuff and it's awesome. And when we do something different with it, it is literally hell on earth. So with that little micro rant there, Pastor Ben, what am I missing on that? Anything before we get into the darkness of it?
Not at all. I like the fact that we're talking about that sex is good and it was created by God for our joy inside that context, and we just don't want to be those folks who are like, no, it's bad, it's gross, so save it for the one that you love. No, it's actually a good thing in the right context. It's a great thing, but man, when we go awry, it gets bad in a logarithmic progression.
Yeah, nicely put, and it's tempting to not overreact, but to react in the wrong direction in situations like this. Well, sex is the problem, or men are the problem, or something like that. And it's like, this is all stuff that God made. It's just not getting used the way that God made it to get used. So that's...
When you have fire in a fireplace, it's a wonderful thing, and it's a great tool.
Yes, you can make pizza.
Yes. When the fire is outside of your fireplace, outside of the boundaries it's meant to be in, it's very destructive very quickly and can consume everything that you hold dear.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Tricia, you can take this anywhere you want to go. What I want to do is I want to turn this into kind of a training session. And this idea sort of popped up last time you were in here in season 1. And we said, we just got to talk about how to equip people to recognize and respond to these situations. So on a very practical level, I just want to do that training. So I got a list of questions here, but you can redirect this however you want.
Let me go back first to, you asked for the definition and I got distracted with the labor trafficking.
I'm sorry.
So that's okay. The definition for sex trafficking, especially the difference between prostitution and sex trafficking legally, is the use of force, fraud, or coercion to compel a person into a commercial sex act. Or, that big or that we need to talk about, is anyone under the age of 18 involved in a commercial sex act. Even if that child has solicited the act or come on to someone or whatever it might be, our law says anyone under the age of 18 does not have the mental capacity to make those decisions for themselves.
So they may have solicited the sexual activity themselves, but they are not legally able to grant consent. So
Correct.
It's still, okay.
Correct. So whoever is purchasing that or exchanging whatever in value for that is committing sex trafficking. So we call the crimes different things than sex trafficking here in Washington State: commercial sexual abuse of minor, and soliciting prostitution, and a lot of other things. But they all are grouped under sex trafficking.
Is there like an age range? Because I've heard things like that where if somebody's 17 and somebody's 18 or 19, you're on different sides of the barrier, but there's got to be like a 4-year separation before it's considered.
That's for statutory rape.
Yeah.
So that is a non-commercial. So when we're talking about trafficking, it has that commercial element into it.
Got it.
There's so many kinds of sexual abuse, and a lot of what we talk about for prevention of sex trafficking is also going to be prevention of any other kinds of sexual abuse as well. Okay. So
sure. All right. So let's talk about like risk categories. Mm-hmm. So gender stats. Excuse me. Gender stats for sex trafficking victims. My understanding of it is roughly we're talking about 3/4 girls and then 1/4 of it, which surprised me when I heard that stat, that it's that much, that big of a slice of the pie is boys that are being trafficked. But roughly 75% to 25%. Is that broken out? Is that change in different age ranges? I mean, what are the risk factors and what are the biggest risk categories?
Okay. Talking from what we have seen, our clientele is over 90% female, but it's a lot of what you're talking about is estimates. The thing is it's so much harder to get the guys help and to get them to come forward. When we talk about how God designed sex, he also designed our bodies to respond, and to respond in physical ways. For guys, they respond much more clearly, and then that gets used against them by their predators and stuff, right? Well, obviously you wanted this. It's your fault. You're making me do this. So there's a big shame factor there. Guys are also supposed to be the strong protector, not the victim.
Mm-hmm. And that sets in young. I mean, that's something that we feel when we're, 6, 7, 8 years old,
right,
that we're supposed to be tough.
Yeah. So if you go in and you tell someone, hey, I've been victimized, you have the shame of that just being a victim, not being tough enough, right? As well. You have the fact that very often for anybody of any age and gender, they're not believed when somebody comes forward with a sexual accusation. But for the boys, even more so. And especially, you see these stories where a female teacher has been exploiting boys, and the comments you hear around town are, "Ooh, lucky kid."
Right.
Right?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's a kid, and he's been exploited.
Yeah, and the damage and the scar tissue that causes. I mean, when you, because what middle school boy hasn't thought about like a hot teacher or something like that, and so like the jokes turn into, hey, he's fulfilling every boy's fantasy or something like that. But then 10, 15, 20 years down the road, he can't relate properly to his wife, and he's in Ben's office and my office, just completely mentally and emotionally and spiritually deconstructed. So yeah, this is not funny stuff.
No, it's not. But maybe we're deflecting, but also it's a societal norm that we have to fight against, and it's becoming more and more of a norm. Statistics, stay on topic. There's so many places to go. Statistics. So we are seeing people from every socioeconomic background. There really isn't a normal picture of who is a victim, nor a normal picture of who is a predator. I can give you the average predator when we get to that, but the average for a victim is anyone who has any kind of vulnerabilities that somebody can exploit.
Man, that's a big category.
So
it is.
Just to kind of clarify then, so we have in our minds folks that would be kind of labeled like at risk, right?
We do have some of those,
and you have that category. But even those who may not necessarily fall into that category, maybe coming from a quote good home or having a quote good family structure or anything like that, though you still find a number of victims from those categories as well.
Right. So statistically, disproportionately, you're going to see people who are of any color other than your basic white Caucasian are disproportionately trafficked. We still have more Caucasian victims or survivors that we are working with. But when you look at the total populations and statistically who we're working with, it's disproportionate that way.
Right, because Tri-Cities is very predominantly a white area, right? So we're gonna have more of that. But you're saying that
when you look at the total, say just black population in Tri-Cities, and then the number of victims that we are serving and working with, disproportionately that's higher than the any other. We see a lot with the native indigenous peoples as well. And then one of the huge risk factors, or a couple of them, are being involved in the foster care system. Whether that is because you were first trafficked or, exploited, and that's how you got into the system, whether it was you got exploited while in the system, whether it was because you ran away or somebody saw your vulnerabilities and exploited those because you're yearning for that love and family and acceptance. There's a lot of reasons for that, but over 80% of kids who've been rescued nationwide have been part of the foster care system.
Wow.
Yeah. National Center of Missing Exploited Children, where you see all those missing kids posters, 90% of the kids who are missing that are part of that, 90% of them are endangered runaways. Majority of them were in services when they ran away. And then you put in that vulnerability.
You're talking about in services, you mean part of a program like the foster care system or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
is there a breakdown like as far as like group homes versus say like and I don't have much experience with the foster care system recently. And so is there a breakdown of kids that are part of a group home versus maybe kids that have been brought in by like a brother sister pair or a single child brought into a family? Is there any kind of breakdown that
I haven't seen those studies, but they would be interesting too. I know, I need to not call out organizations by name, but a group facility in a larger city that, it's right there in the middle of town. So it's not necessarily that the facility is a bad thing or the program is a bad thing, but the kids come and go on their own throughout the day. They have a safe bed to sleep in at night. Well, you're coming and going throughout the day, and the predators know this is where the homeless youth
So they kind of
live.
just dropped them into the middle of a danger zone.
Right.
Yeah.
So with our youth, so for instance, we have Esther's home that will be opening up, and it's
Yes.
out in the middle of the country because we don't want them to be able to just go out and be prey right there for every predator.
Yeah, and this goes back to the design of God. I mean, fatherlessness, I would guess that the stats bear this out. I don't know what they are, but just in working with people, right, fatherlessness is one of the biggest indicators of risk factor to a whole slew of behaviors behaviors and coercions and things like that. I mean, dad being protector and also freeing up, dad being provider and freeing up mom to be attentive so that she's not gone working 3 jobs and things like that. The family structure is a kind of a firewall against so much. Now, obviously, that can go wrong internally as well. We see that where, a young lady will come in and say, hey, I was just raped by my dad or my brother, and they're covering for each other. So, when people are involved, there's no perfect system. But the way God set up the family is to protect the vulnerable inside of that family from this. And when that breaks down, no government agency is going to fix that. Right? Foster care is not going to solve the problem that fatherlessness creates. So anyway, there's my shout out for not trusting systems other than what God has created. There you go. So, what about, we've got we've been talking demographics and stuff. What about behaviors? I mean, are there risky behaviors that somebody innocently, let's just throw a sample out there. Let's say middle school girl, right? Now, if she is trafficked or kidnapped or whatever, there's no victim blaming going on here. What can, she do to have her eyes up to say, okay, I'm not going to make it easy, right? So what are some risky behaviors that we as parents should be not allowing our kids to engage in frivolously, things like that?
Okay, we're going to have a longer conversation about internet overall, but I want to start with, because I don't want to miss it, we have a normalization in our society, even here in our Tri-Cities community, of sexting or sending nudes or pictures of body parts or whatever. Our young kids are doing this on a really regular, normal basis. It's become normalized and expected. What they fail to realize is they're creating child pornography, which is actually a federal crime. So helping to educate our kids and empower them with open communication and lack of judgment from us is really important. If they hear us being judgmental, if they hear us talking about how horrible those kids are that do that, and it's happened to them or it's happened to their friend, they're not going to come talk to you about it. So we have to be really careful how we talk about things at home, and we have to be really careful to make purposeful, open conversation about these really tough issues they're dealing with. They're constantly being bombarded with things on sexual identity, gender identity, all these things that at our age we're like, what on earth are you people talking about?
Yeah.
But they're being bombarded with it. They're being bombarded with peer-to-peer exploitation. And if you're a young girl and those young girls, they just yearn to be loved, right? I was never a young boy, so I'm not sure if that was as deep of a desire for that kind of relationship.
Boys look for it differently, right? It's a matter of respect within the community based on, strength or perseverance or, whatever it is. And that's why the bullying takes the physical form that it does with boys, whereas with girls it takes the more relational form and, things like that. But yeah, it's the same stuff. People are people, right?
Yeah. And any kid who's been abused in the past, that kind of puts a bullseye on them with that vulnerability as well. But where we were seeing the vast majority of the victims we worked with were coming from familial trafficking was their first experience with trafficking. That was typically their mommy was selling them at ages 3 to 7 for
Why
most
is it
of our
usually
clients.
the mom?
Probably because of that absence of father that you were talking about. So dad wasn't there. And maybe it was because dad was already abusing previously. But for some reason, it's been the mom with the ones that we're working with.
That seems strange to me because the maternal instinct is one of the most fearsome forces in the world. And the fact that it's so common that mechanism breaks down, that's surprising to me.
3 main ways we see it is intergenerational. This is what's always happened. This is how we do it.
It was done to the mom, so now she's...
And to grandma and to great-grandma. It's just been this is who we are and what we do. Gang trafficking, because a lot of the gals are mamas at, 12 and 14 years of age. You've got intergenerational stuff going on with that, and that's the girl's role in the gang. And then drug use, meth and fentanyl and those beasts, they're demons, and they will make a mommy forget what her main role is, and they will do anything for it. And unfortunately, they then also start feeding those drugs to the kids quite often and get the kids addicted. So they're easier to manipulate and take care of. Yeah. But beyond that dark spot, we do also see, our healthy families are getting more and more. We're seeing this happening with the kids in the healthy families because of the internet in particular. We have what we would call Romeo pimping and stuff at schools, right? Where you have that peer-to-peer, somebody's going to come in, or the older romantic boy comes in, or even one of the first cases recognized as trafficking here in the Tri-Cities was an older girl who came in, and it wasn't romantic. It was just, coming into your nice church daughters saying, oh, your dad's pretty strict, isn't he? Your parents really don't understand you. Hey, you'd look great in these jeans. Hey, just come dance. You don't have to do it's not like you have to take off your clothes or anything. You just come dance. And then they show up after, all this friendship building and are forced into doing something.
That's a really good point, because see, I'm a homeschool dad. So my gut reaction is, well, hey, just get your kids out of school. No problem. Like, I did it. It's fine.
I can tell you we have several clients that are homeschool.
Yeah. There's just
well-churched kids.
That's one of the things, man. Like, people are like, evil people are clever.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So remind me, let's get to that predator piece too. But
if you're asking me to keep you on track, I'm probably the wrong guy. Ben?
Yes. I will play the
responsible adult in the room.
Responsible adult in the room, yes.
Okay, so we're reminding you about what now?
Predators. So we can talk,
Got it.
Common predators. But the other part on the healthy families is all of our kids are online constantly anymore.
Yeah.
Not our kids, all of us, right? We're not setting good examples, because you go anywhere and you can see whole mobs of people, whether they're sitting at a restaurant together, at home together, whatever, everybody's on their own devices. If you count up how many internet loaded devices you have at your home, let's play a little game. How many have you got? You've got your phones. Do you have a smart TV? A Ring doorbell? Gaming systems? How many iPads or notebooks? How many, what am I forgetting? Computers? Yep. How many, laptops?
There's the nanny cams.
The nanny cams. Hey, Siri, there she goes. Oops. Alexa, whatever, all of those guys are all connected to the internet. And we're letting strangers into our homes.
Refrigerators, by the way.
Yes.
Smart refrigerators. Yeah. Like, that's how you know that you have conquered every serious issue in the world. You're not running from lions and tigers anymore. Like, all of our survival issues have been officially conquered by the time we get to the smart refrigerator that tells you when you're out of milk. We are the most bored human beings alive. I'm sorry. There's my social commentary.
Does it tell you if your milk is out of date?
Okay.
I
don't know.
Anyways.
Creepy.
That's terrifying.
We have to be able to protect our kids. Yes. So first off, I want to, make sure you're putting protections in place in your home, just like you lock your doors. It doesn't mean the guy with the, great big ramming pole isn't going to break through your window and come in, but it's going to keep most people out when you lock your doors.
Hackers got a lockpick set.
Yeah.
By the way, and I just got a book recommended to me, so it just came in, and I haven't read it yet, but I'm really interested to read this. So I'm just going to shout it out. No, I'm not recommending it, because I haven't read it yet. But it's Gary Chapman wrote it, who's a relatively trusted source, very trusted source, and it's called Screen Kids, and it's about this very thing. So I'm interested to read that and just get a Christian parent's recommended response to this issue of our kids being exposed to all of this stuff on the other end of the screen all the time. So, Screen Kids.
And I know there's a number of different books on this as well. You got Tony Renick's book,
How Your Phone is Changing You. That book terrified me.
Oh yeah, terrifying. And then you have the work by Cheryl Turkle that's come out of. She's a psychologist at MIT. I think one's called Alone Together, and the other one's called the disappearing or the vanishing of conversation or something like that. And they're both really excellent. From those two in particular are from a secular psychological understanding of what is going on with even just young minds and even adult minds and this connected society in which we live.
Have you heard chiropractors talk about the way that their job is changing? With minors, text neck. They're like, we're adjusting middle schoolers like crazy. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so they're if your kids have devices in their rooms at night, think of it as if there was a 45-year-old man you don't know who came and knocked on your front door and said they wanted to come in and sit and talk with your daughter in her bedroom.
Oh.
Are you going to let him in?
So at the beginning of this episode, I said...
We're going to give you some more. Your 7-year-old son is playing Fortnite, but he has headphones on. Are you going to answer that door with that 45-year-old man who says he'd like to come in and play a board game with your son? We suggest, and all of the authorities suggest, nothing good happens online after 9 or 10, whatever your time frame is. Make sure there's no internet devices in their rooms after that time. Charge the devices in the parents' room at night. They get checked in at 9 o'clock every night. There's also a lot of devices you can get that you can monitor and shut off internet things. Bark app is one of them. I've not used it, but I've watched some of the stuff. Shared Hope International has recommended them, but they monitor and they will alert you when there's self-harm behavior coming up, or there's talks of suicide ideation, or there's whether it's your kid is saying it or somebody is sending them messages. There's an adult talking with your kid. So it will alert you, and you have controls to where you can, shut off the internet at 9 o'clock at night or whatever. But those kinds of things that we have forgotten that, hey, we're literally inviting that stranger into our home. I don't want to say don't invite strangers into your home because Christ tells us to do that. But
make sure the parents are the ones engaging
as a
them.
family.
Well, you don't invite that stranger to sit in your child's bedroom with them once the lights go out.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of, like, when we have strangers in our home, I just open carry. And I just strap on an AR-15 with a sash of bullets, Arnold Schwarzenegger style, and then I say, let's have dinner. So, I mean, digitally, there's got to be a way to do that, right?
A little bit. So if your 7-year-old is playing Fortnite, don't do headphones. You, as a family, are going to be involved in that game. You're going to be annoyed with the sounds, and probably then you'll have less screen time too. So fair trade.
Well, and sometimes what we'll do, and I have two boys who have gone through the Fortnite trade. By the way, my sons, I won't call you out, but sorry if this might stick out. What we've done is we've sat next to them, and so we'll ask, who are you talking with? Do I know them? Those were very serious conversations. My youngest, and this is something that we are struggling with as we look at him getting older, is that he doesn't have a smartphone. He was given a watch, and that watch is only able to send text messages, and it was an Apple Watch, and it was in many ways, I think it was a great solution because it allows us to still be able to text him and, call him and things like that. But it doesn't give him this device, which has so much more capabilities. To be able to
his watch has more capabilities.
I know it does. And I've locked down as much as I can. And so
that's one of the things with, there is another one called Gab, or I can't remember the name. There are some that literally they're just almost a walkie-talkie. So you can only communicate with certain people that are put on there, and it has no other internet devices. But your kids are gonna run into, maybe if they're not homeschooled, they're on a school bus. The kids on the school bus are going to be looking at something on their iPad or their school issued Chromebook.
Oh yeah, and my kids are homeschooled, but they're hanging out at the baseball fields with their team and meeting people.
Have Wi-Fi and other kids have phones. They're going to show them. So we also not only have to put those protections in place, but we have to educate our kids. And we have to make sure they know it's safe, open communication. So we're talking about these tough issues, before they are facing them. And we're continuing to talk about them. We don't have one conversation and, okay, we talked about sex. We're done. We talk about the fact that sex is a beautiful thing and there is a boundary and a purpose for it, a place where it should be, and why that is.
A couple of resources on that I would love to recommend to you guys. Josh McDowell and his wife, what's her name? Dottie or something? I don't know. Anyway.
Mrs. McDowell?
Yeah, Mrs. McDowell. They wrote a book called Straight Talk with Your Kids about sex, and it's really, really helpful. It gives practical tips for each age and how to put the parents in control of the conversation so that you're not just, fumbling and feeling awkward. It can be uncomfortable. I feel like it shouldn't be, but it can be. And so that's a great resource. Short little book too, and very helpful. Also, when your kids are little, there's a book called God Made All of Me. And it just gives them, some vocabulary for understanding what their body is, what the body parts are for, what's appropriate and what's not. And it gives them a way to discuss these things with their parents. So you can open up those conversations very early.
Excellent. So they got to know what the normals are and why we have those boundaries and parameters. You can't just tell them, because I said so.
Right.
That was my dad's best line. But, yeah, we have the right to say that as a parent, but we're not equipping them because I said so doesn't equip them as to why. So when they go out and they're faced with it, even if you can protect them completely until they're 18 and then they go off on their own, the world's going to slap them hard and they're going to think, what is this? And I'm going to need to look at it and see. So,
yeah. So to equip the parents then, what can we teach our kids to look out for online?
Okay. I'm going to have you go to a few different things on your own so you get further education than what we can do here. And I can give you the links so that you can share them. But National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Oh,
guys, we can put these links in the description thing on this podcast. So we will do that.
Okay. They have Net Smarts, it's called. I'll send you this so you'll have them all.
Cool.
It's a program. It's kind of a fun program for your younger kids to work through on how to be smart on the computer and what to watch for. Shared Hope International has a series of things, what we do to prevent on internet safety. They're a good one. And then Google even put in, they decided to put in some education pieces for us as well. So going to those things with your kids, learning with your kids, because they probably know more than you do. And they know a lot of the tricks and the get-arounds as well, too. And I know, it would never be your child.
Nope. My kids are angels.
And
I'm just having this conversation for everybody else because y'all got messed up kids, but my kids are perfect. So good luck with all of that.
Yeah, we're just asking for a friend.
Yeah. We have worked with kids of law enforcement agents that, have known all of it and protected in every way they could and told them everything. We've worked with pastors' kids. We've worked with elected officials' kids. We've worked with, they know, but they don't know. Yeah. But they believe that it couldn't happen to them.
Yeah.
So they miss those signs. But one of the big ones you can do is just keep internet devices out of the bedrooms. Probably period would be great, but after say 9:00, everything gets checked in and plugged in for the night.
Yep. Control that front door.
Yeah. I mean, if some boy had called me at 10:00 at night, my dad would have had a fit. So, would you want them calling your home phone at 10:00 at night? Then you probably don't want them.
I got laughed at in high school. I called Emily, and her dad answered, and I was like, and it was late because I said I was going to call her that day or something. So anyway, it was late, and I called, and he just laughed, and he was like, "Yeah, you guys can maybe talk tomorrow if I decide I'm okay with it. Bye." So yeah, being able to do that digitally. I want to ask you, Tricia, about the things that our kids are experiencing now as far as the change in the social landscape digitally, because you were reading me these stats about how they see even the idea of friendship, and it's not the same as it was a few years ago. And so this is the social landscape that makes so much of this possible and common. So I want parents to hear this stuff. Can I have you read off some of those stats that you only got part of the way through it with me, but
I don't know if you want all of them on
well,
here,
whatever you think is good, just read them in on this, because this is what's going on.
This is from Thorn, THORN, like on a rose, right? A beautiful thing with some protection. But
whoa, that was deep. I like that. All right, go ahead.
I was doing gardening this weekend, so it was a reminder.
Thus the Band-Aids, yeah.
Yeah. But we grew up learning about stranger danger, right? And we're not going to invite. Once again, I have to be careful with that. We're supposed to invite the stranger in. We're not going to have kids. We're not going to invite the stranger into our daughter's bedroom at night. But these kids are online all the time, and they're friending someone who either makes themselves feel familiar. Back to that predator talk, right? They make themselves seem familiar. So they're friends with, they're going to check out the kid's Instagram or Snapchat or whatever and get to know, oh, you like dogs, and use that commonality there. They're going to see that someone checked in at whatever coffee shop and figure that they probably live within a certain radius of that coffee shop, or see that they go to this school and say that they go to the same school or maybe the neighboring school, because that was pretty exotic when you're in middle school and you have a boyfriend that's from the other school. So all of those things that make them feel a little bit familiar. Mm-hmm. So you ask these kids and they'll tell you, what would we call it? RIL? IRL, in real life. Everything's an acronym. Do you know these people IRL? And well, no, I've never met them. I've never seen them, but they're not strangers. I do know them because I know them online. They will also tell you that of those ones, that 40% of them have been approached by someone that they thought was attempting to befriend and manipulate them. They will tell you that they believe their online, not IRL friends are their biggest confidants. So they're more willing to tell them their deep, dark secrets. And those predators are more willing to accommodate those deep, dark secrets. So especially if you have kids who are starting to question their identities or figure out what that means, because there's such push on that. Mm-hmm. They are being exposed to it. Even your homeschool kids are hearing it.
I've even seen commercials for it. Like, I was watching Hulu and there was a commercial for some gal was like, I think I'm a lesbian. And then it advertised a website to go to find out if you're actually gay or not. And I'm like, I wonder what the answer is going to be from that website.
Did you try it?
No, I'm pretty sure I'm not a lesbian.
It'd be interesting to see what your test came out as.
That's true. So, I should do that. Yeah. I don't remember the website. Results to be published on in season 3 of Hungry for Wisdom.
Don't Google it. Just don't Google it. Okay, some more stats you wanted here. Young people view flirting or dating with adults online as common. In fact, 1 in 4 of the 9 to 12-year-olds see it as normal for kids their age to date adults aged 18 to 20.
One more time.
9 to 12-year-olds see it as normal for kids their age to date adults aged 18 to 20.
Normal.
1 in 4 of them said that's
25%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that admitted to it.
Right, in this way. So minors are regularly approached online by someone they believe is attempting to befriend and manipulate them. 4 in 10 minors said they've been approached online by someone they believed was trying to manipulate them.
4 in 10. So 40% said that they've been approached by somebody so these are just the 40% that sniffed it out.
Yeah. Out of that was kind of the average, right? About 50% of the teen girls were saying they'd experienced this. So if you have a identity online as a teen or preteen girl, you're going to get a lot more of that. Young people are frequently asked for nudes by contacts they know only online. 40% of minors have experienced cold solicitations for nudes online. So
you define cold solicitation?
They don't even think they know them. It's the first messaging that they're getting from somebody. It's, hey, do you want to be daddy's princess? Send me a picture of you in your pajamas. Send me a picture of, and then it progresses from there. Including roughly 1 in 4 of the 9 to 12-year-olds. So this is the young kids too, right? I mean, think of your 9-year-olds, are being asked for those pictures as well. And
I told you guys at the front of this episode you were going to want to kill somebody. So I just got to reiterate, Christians, no, you shall not murder.
You're even going to pray for them because they are, we call them perverts, right? But they're normal people. They're people you go to church with. They're people you go to work with. Yeah,
and they're perverts. I mean, and I don't mean to get sarcastic about it. It's just like, the fact that perversion is normal is worth lamenting. And when you lead somebody to Christ, there's a decent chance, a higher percentage chance than we might realize, that you're going to be discipling them out of some really perverted behavior, right? And pervs need Jesus too.
And statistically, it's within the church as much as outside the church. So we have to be able to respond with grace and say, let's help each other.
Well, and that's a huge
out
point,
of that.
because if somebody's far from Christ and they're doing this kind of stuff and they're in the grips of the devil and then they're propagating demonic activity like this, what else is the solution? I mean, you can't just get mad at him and say death penalty for all of them, shotgun circumcisions, go. It's like, that's not the Christian attitude either. And so, yeah, we should be around people that need to be evangelized and discipled out of this kind of stuff. So, yeah, you're going to be around them, guys. That's true. Separation, like cloistering ourselves, is not a workable solution to this.
And it's not what God calls us to.
Bingo.
So, I mean, how many prostitutes are in the line of Jesus? So, we're supposed to reach out and to the broken and hurting, and just think, if we can help and heal them, there's so many fewer people who are going to be, am I getting my words out correctly? Yeah. We'll have less people getting victimized because and then they're going to change other men's lives. So, and I
don't know if you know the stats on this, but there's something like, they say 200. By the time somebody gets arrested for, like a sexual abuse of a minor, I think is specifically what it is. By the time they get found out and arrested, they've got an average of like 200 victims or 200 crimes, maybe multiple ones against the same victims. Yeah. And so when one person turns away from this behavior, there's an exponential, sine curve that says, okay, all of this abuse and trauma is now being staved off because that one person has stopped.
And then hopefully he gets to mentor other boys and other men and help them understand the differences. Most people don't start out by raping tiny children. Most people start out with pornography or their own abuse as a child that then goes into different things. They start out with pornography. Maybe they didn't even intend to start with pornography. We have little kids that are getting addicted to pornography because it's popping up on them. Things they search for, things they're watching. You can have YouTube videos and be scrolling through and watching. As a parent, it looks like it's, Shrek or a Disney thing, but it's actually self-harm videos or sexual videos with cartoons and things like that they're grooming. It's like that frog in the kettle, right? And the water just gets warmer, and we don't see it.
I was going to say on that, we talk about this word grooming, right? And I definitely want to get into talking about, what, the demand side as well. But, as both a parent and also as, someone who ministers to parents as well, can we have a good idea or a good definition of what grooming is? And then maybe how to either spot it or even help our child spot, okay, this is a start of a grooming kind of a thing.
Yeah, I wish I could give you a really clear picture. We talked about some of the online stuff, and that's going to be a big part of it. But in real life too, and especially within the church or single moms, you are going to see people. A predator is going to look like a good guy more often than a creep. A predator is going to make himself trusted and known in the community. He's going to make himself known. So we're sitting here in the church, right? He's going to make himself known at church as a good guy. He's going to have a reputation going around. When you look at some of the people who've been arrested in the Tri-Cities in the last few years, you have somebody who was our Kennewick School superintendent and somebody who was a youth pastor and somebody who ran a youth organization, a wrestling coach, things like that. They put themselves and make themselves look trustworthy. And then they find opportunities to use that trust to separate a child from their parents. So whether it's offering that single mom, hey, I can watch your kids for you, no problem, I'll babysit, that's great. Sounds like a nice thing, and hopefully it is, but it's a red flag that you want to watch for. The coach or the whoever wants to take the kids on a special trip and, he'll do it, he'll pay for it, no problem, he's taking them and doing stuff. Even that coach or that leader who is giving special attention to one child is, even if you're that one child and starting to feel special about it, is a big deal.
That's the old Jerry Sandusky move right there.
They might be doing it with several one children at a time, right?
Yeah.
And then there's physical grooming too, where there's just kind of prepping and testing, where we give big hugs, but we let go pretty quick, right? We don't linger with them. When somebody kind of gives you that creepy feeling, you know, they're touching you for a little longer than feels right, but you haven't pulled away. That gives them, they're going to try their next step of, that test. Now they might put their hand on the thigh and maybe the inner thigh just to see. But, you know, we're just having a conversation and talking. It's no big deal. They might do a little bit more caressing, that kind of stuff. Just testing the waters and prepping to where it's a little bit more normal for that more contact. My heart hates to say all these things because I want to see us hugging and having as much physical contact as possible in a healthy way, right?
Humans, like Paul tells Timothy, right? Love your sisters in all purity as sisters. It's a good thing.
We need that, but you need to watch for, if God also gave us Jiminy Cricket, or the Holy Spirit, perhaps. He gave us that little voice in there that says, something's not right.
Yeah.
Listen to that little voice. Women have a harder time listening to it than men do because we've been trained to be nice and polite and not judge people. And so maybe Christians even as a whole have a harder time listening to that, right? We're not supposed to judge people. So I don't know why I think he's creepy, but I just need to be nice. Yeah. And I need to trust him.
We don't know what the Lord's doing.
Yeah. So, but listen to that little voice. Be kind, be loving, be full of grace, but be wise and protect yourself and your children, and teach your children those things. So, once again, it comes back to the biggest thing for prevention is, lack of demand, but for prevention would be those healthy conversations. We have on our website, Not a Product, and it's meant to have conversations with your kids, even tiny little preschoolers. We use Disney movie clips. They're getting kind of old. We need to find some new movies. But Frozen, are you guys familiar with the movie Frozen? Is Princess Anna in love with Prince Hans?
Hold on, who are the characters?
Princess Anna
is Hans the guy that turned out? Spoiler alert!
Shh! Don't say yet. Was the princess in love with the prince who could finish her? They finished each other's
sandwiches.
Yeah.
Okay. No.
So she was in love with him?
No.
You don't think she was in love with him? They wanted to get married.
That's not love.
Okay. Pastor. Take your pastor hat off.
I'm wearing my dad hat.
Yeah. Okay. What's your kid going to say when he first sees the movie? Is Princess Anna in love with Prince Hans?
You're asking the wrong guy.
Ben, will you cooperate with me?
Well, and the reason is because we watch these movies with our kids and we train them. We use these as training things, and so we used that one where we said, guys, is that she wanted to start a relationship with him that was going to last the rest of her life. What are the problems here? We watched Moana. And which is just straight Hawaiian paganism, right? Like Maui made the world and he's like, you're welcome. And, The Rock gets his voice put through Pro Tools and it was a joke. And so we watched that with them and we were like, okay, guys, did Maui make the world? And they're, no. All right, what's Maui? He's a demon, Dad. And so my house is a training ground for this kind of stuff, which I think is what you're getting at, yes, where it's like, how do we teach our kids to understand these things that are coming at them as influences?
Right. So if you were cooperating with me, yes, we'd have those conversations. So it appears that she's in love. It appears at the beginning that Prince Hans is in love with her. It's kind of unusual that he seems to know all of the things she likes, right? So in the grooming process, they're going to try to find out, and it's easy. I know already that some of the most precious things in your life are your children.
Hans is a groomer?
Hans is a groomer. And then he goes on, because what is it Hans really wants? Is he in love with Anna?
He just wants the throne.
The power,
the throne and the power, right? I mean, he tries to kill her, so obviously he's not in love with her, or not a healthy love anyways. So yeah, we see Hans and we can see there's a groomer. If you want to talk labor trafficking, look at Pinocchio.
Yeah. With Geppettophile. I remember that one. It's like, Geppetto is the creepiest character in all Disney, I think.
Well, I mean, you get into like those very popular from the quote golden age of Disney, right? You've got like Beauty and the Beast.
Yep.
Right. You've got Belle, who's hanging out with a guy who is clearly oppressive, but he'll be better at the end. And it's like, wow, that's training our daughters to like, live with a beast and just hope that he gets better in the end.
Yeah, and
dude throws her in jail, and apparently that's romantic at some level.
What? I can fix him. Well, and those are all rehashes of old traditional stories that go back some of them to ancient Egypt, right? So this has been coming at kids in every generation, and now it's just they've got really good music to go along with it. Or in the case of Frozen 2, really awful music. That was abominable, by the way.
Haven't seen that one.
Don't.
Saw first Frozen. So what do we usually tell our little girls when they complain because the little boy behind them in school is pulling their hair? It must mean that
that he likes
you. Right?
Yeah.
Is that a good training for our girls? So that boy that's hurting you physically, it's because he likes you.
Okay, so interesting test case there, because I see exactly what you're saying, and you're totally right. But that's also true. That's how little boys show flirtation at times. Okay. So then, given those set of facts, the proper response to train our daughters for is, turn around and punch him. This is not okay. Where do you go from there?
I would say we need to be careful with our words, that we're not saying it's okay that this boy hurts you because he's showing you his love this way, because that's the same thing they're going to be told in a domestic violence situation.
Okay. So maybe
and also teaching our little boys that, hey, this is not the way to show her that you like her. Perhaps you could give her a flower instead of pulling her hair.
I still like the idea of kickboxing as well.
Kickboxing can work too, but then she gets in trouble at school. So.
Well, and that works in grade school when they're physically equals, right? But then at a certain point, the boys pull ahead in the muscle density department. So maybe something like, hey, maybe he's just trying to show you he likes you. Now that's not appropriate, and you should not let him do that. But he might not. He just might not know how to express himself or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I got you.
So, making sure they understand that it's not okay for someone to hurt them, especially because, to show them affection.
Yeah.
Because they like them, it's okay. So, those messagings are important.
So I think, as we've talked about kind of like maybe what this grooming is, this kind of seems to like it's a desensitization.
Yes.
A pathway towards being totally desensitized and to actually being kind of manipulated, as it were,
Correct.
into agreeing into this particular activity. Right. So
not even agreeing, it's kind of done to you without your knowledge. It's a progression. It's almost always a slow progression, or they jump straight into kind of a gang rape situation where then they have the manipulation over. But then they'll use that and they'll say, we have pictures of this. If you tell anybody, we can share these pictures in an instant. If you tell anybody, we're going to show these pictures to your pastor. What's he going to think about you, you little slut? Wow. You little whore. And they throw all the shame and blame on the kid or the adult, whoever it might be. So there's fear factors, there's shame, there's blame. There's a lot of mental coercion. There's not near as much of the caging and chaining as we see in Hollywood versions. There's some of that too, unfortunately, but there's a lot of really rough mental manipulation. There's
a book out there that has got a lot of great information on this. It's called The Socially Skilled Child Molester by Carla Van Dam. And the subtitle is Differentiating the Guilty from the Falsely Accused. And so basically what it does is it just goes through a whole bunch of these, activities, their perspective on things, their approach to things and all that. So the socially skilled child molester is, it's going to ruin your next 3 months of social interactions, right? But for parents, it's worthwhile.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if that's all the case, how do you tell, like, if your friend or if your child is being groomed? What would be some things for like us as parents or us as friends to look out for, especially for those who are young and vulnerable?
Yeah. Typically they're going to start pulling away from family and friends, right? The trafficker, the groomer is going to be trying to build some separation there. So they become the trusted person or the one that has to be relied on, and there's a gap in between. So once again, whether it's that fear factor or, the manipulation of grooming of a romantic factor, they will probably change the way they're dressing, whether it's that they get more provocatively dressed or that they kind of bury themselves in big sweatshirts and stuff. But there will be kind of a large difference that you might see in dressing. They're going to get secretive, not want to talk about that boyfriend or that person. They might have another phone or something that suddenly appears, or expensive gifts, or getting their nails done when that wasn't something that they could have done before. Because hopefully you as a parent you're monitoring their phone, but the person who's wanting them to do stuff wants them to have a device that's not being monitored. They may be sneaking out at night. They may not be showing up for class. They may be just a lot of secretive behavior. You may see injuries, or you will see strange behavior. Sometimes parents have said they just became a monster or a brat and we couldn't figure out what was going on.
Which is tricky because you hear that about, I mean, kids hit phases where that's
Right.
that's just kind of what you expect. So is there a certain kind of flag to look out for that's not, oh, well, they're 13, what do you do?
I would say it's a time to really explore, for whatever reason it is, explore and have conversation. They're not going to want to, so figure out how you can have conversation. When you get to those ages, it's more doing something side by side where you're more likely to have conversation than sitting down face to face and saying, why are you being a brat, is not going to work very well.
Yeah.
But there may be some other sort of, mental health crisis they're going through, or identity crisis or whatever. And so it's a great intervention time period. Spending more time with, down at Uncle John's down the street. That was a horrible choice for her.
We can move past that one. Yeah, spend more time fishing with your kids. Yeah. Yeah, and so with parents then, I mean, let's say my daughter sees some signs of concern in a friend of hers. Mm-hmm. What should my daughter do if she thinks that her friend is in a difficult situation? Who to tell, what to say, when to say it? What do you think?
Along with those tricky people, we'll talk about trusted adults. So your conversations are always going to be with them. You're going to keep building that conversation. You can always come to me. It's safe. You won't, you're not going to get grounded. We're not going to steal all your devices away. We're not going to make your life miserable. We're going to figure out how to help you. So your daughter can come to you as a safe, trusted adult, because that's been built and made clear that can happen. We're also going to give them some other options for safe, trusted adults, right? Mm-hmm. Because sometimes it is rough and they don't want to talk to mom or dad about it. And so a trusted aunt or uncle or grandparent or person in the church or something, where they feel they can have that other option if they need a backup.
Yeah.
I've had parents talk about giving their kids a get out of jail free card from like Monopoly game.
Yeah.
And hey, things haven't gone right. I screwed up. I sent this guy this picture, and now all of this is falling in on my head. This happened to my friend, and I want to talk to you about my friend. They can come to you with that little get out of jail free card, whatever you want to call it, and whatever it looks like, and put that down on the table first, so you have a moment to catch your breath.
That's the same way
and
that
remind yourself that.
Yeah, that's the same way we approach God when we've sinned horribly, right?
Mm-hmm.
We say, I appeal to a mercy that you have previously extended, and I'm cashing that in right now. 1 John 1:9, Yeah.
So maybe it's a 1 John 1:9 card or a grace card or whatever it might be, but it's a way for us as parents. I'm a very, by nature, black and white rule follower. This is right, this is wrong, whatever. And God's put me in this position with Mirror Ministries to learn how to find a lot more grace.
Something that I'll throw out there just pastorally is parents, do not underestimate the power of praying for your kids. Mm-hmm. We get to see this a lot where, in answer to a prayer, God keeps evil people from doing evil things, and their plans get frustrated, and his kids get protected. And so there's no mathematical formula to it. You can't put God in an arm bar and say, don't let anything bad happen to my kids. He puts a lot of, onus on the parents to be wise and protect and so on. But prayer is a massive protection mechanism that accesses areas that you can't, because God's already there, right? So be praying for your kids and their friends and their interactions and their future spouses and all of this kind of stuff, because God's not screwing around. He loves your kids, and that's why he gave them to you. So prayer is a huge, huge practical tool for protecting your kids.
And for afterwards too. So if something has happened to your kids or something has happened to you, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean you ruined everything. My co-founder with Mirrors said at one point, and it kind of shocked me. She says, your child being sex trafficked is not the worst thing in the world. It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of their life. And I was like, what?
Wow.
But it isn't. The worst thing in the world would be for them to perish and not know Christ. Horrible things happen to people every day, but there's restoration in our Christ. By his blood, we have healing. So give yourself grace if things have gone bad. Give yourself grace if you've had problems or things done to you. And give yourself grace if something happens to your kid and you think you've tried all the best, and then we see so much shame on the parents too, right? They're like, how could I have let this happen? And they did all the right things. Well, but there's evil in our world.
Well, I think it's as parents, right? We also have to understand: are we trying to claim something as a promise that wasn't promised to us? For example, there was the proverb, right? Train up your child in the way they should go, and now they will not. And then you're like, well, hold on a second here. First of all, that might be more of a warning than a promise, but in the same sense, are you claiming something as a promise? Are you kind of even having this business relationship with God? God, I did everything right,
did it all right, and you didn't come through on your end.
You didn't, instead of or even just saying I did everything right, and I'm still a failure as a parent. Now, hold on a second. Let's not press that button, right? We understand about grace. We understand about who Christ is, and frankly, we also understand where our children are. There's all manner of things that are going on, and so to somehow to work to divorce the "I'm a bad parent" button and to have them remove that, right? Can we all improve? Of course, right? But when it comes to okay, now here I'm going to carry this guilt and this shame. I can see where that could even be a problem with a parent who's had a child who's been in this. Now all of a sudden there's this guilt and this shame, and it's all part of that mix. It's like, well, hey, hold on, let's apply the gospel to this liberally here.
Exactly.
So there, I'm sure we've introduced about 17,000 questions that people are going to have, and there's just no way to get to all of them. So let me just kind of get you to give the follow-up mechanisms. I mean, parents need more information. You gave out a lot of great links. We'll put a bunch of those in the description for this episode. There's, we've shouted out some books to read, some resources to educate yourself and your kids and so on. But if there are specific questions about maybe a specific situation, or, hey, here's our situation. How can we react to this? Or what do we do with this problem that we think we're seeing, or something like that? Where can a parent who's freaked out right now and needs a couple of answers go for those answers? Of course, you guys can always call me and Ben.
Yeah, I would say you guys have some educated pastors here, so that's great. You can go to our website or our social media to follow us. You can call that hotline number. Somebody's always answering it. If it's not an urgent thing and they can pass you on to another number, they will do that. But we also do love to do interventions early on. Somebody's in the middle of a grooming process, or the parent thinks that they're about to, or high risk for that. We love sitting with them and being that other safe person, right? The advocate's a little cooler than you as a parent. They know more, right? Because at some point in your child's life, you become really stupid. So, but they're likely to listen to the advocate who's been working with people going through this for years now. So they've seen and they know what's going on. So they're more likely to listen to them. So yeah, go ahead and call us and ask the questions, or set up a time for your kiddo to come on over, or for us to come meet your kid, and whatever that might be. And
can you just give that shout out, the hotline one more time?
Yeah, we'll give it the right number. It's 509-212-9995.
Okay, great. Well, listen, guys, the world is a messed up place. Tricia, can I get an amen?
Amen, and yet we serve a big, big God.
Ben, can I get an amen to that?
Amen.
All right, guys, we'll see you on the next episode.
Hungry for Wisdom is a ministry of Grace and Truth Community in West Richland, Washington. You can find out more about us on our app, social media, or at graceandtruthcommunity.com. We love Him because He first loved us.